Today I'm going to show you how to replace everything inside the Galaxy Note 4. The screen, the charging port, all the speakers, everything. Take off the back plate, the battery, the S pin, and remove the 16 screws that are around the back side. You can see here along the edge that it's the easiest place to lift up around the edge of the screen, but the back frame is still very securely adhered to the screen. So what I do is I take a heat gun and gently warm up around the outside of the phone, not getting the phone too hot to touch or that'll burn your hand, but just warming up the adhesive underneath that'll soften it up. I found that it's a lot easier to push up from the top of the phone because the bottom of the phone next to the charging port is still inside and it's a little harder to lift up down there. So once the screen is pushed away from the frame, you can lift the bottom up and out. That way the charging port doesn't get caught. Here is the headphone jack. You can see the little gold connectors down there at the bottom that just press up against the motherboard, and that's how you get your audio. All the replacement parts and tools will be linked down in the video description below, so if you need anything, go down there and check it out. I'll have it all priced out for you. It looks like the loudspeaker is attached to the back frame and it's not removable. So if you're going to replace your loudspeaker to the phone, you're just going to have to get a new back frame. But luckily, the SD card reader and the SIM card reader are replaceable. Just lift up that little connector. It's kind of like a little Lego piece that you unsnap, and then you can slide your pry tool underneath the little ribbon cable that releases all of the adhesive. And that's all you need to do to replace your SD card reader and SIM card. Once again, the replacement parts will be down in the video description below, so if you need anything, go check it out. And when you go to install it again, I found that it's easiest to clip it in first and then remove the adhesive on the back of the new part and just set it down exactly where the old part was. You can release these little wire cables, including the home button, the earpiece, and the two little antenna ribbons. And then there's another little connection underneath that the charging port uses to connect to the main board. Unsnap that, and then as you lift up the main board from the screen, you can see that there's two more connections back there, and that's what the screen uses to connect to the motherboard. Two connections there and there. Here's the camera. We're going to go ahead and lift that up. Same little Lego connection technology. You can see here on the screen it has the image stabilization, and apparently in the little silver box is where the gyros are. Pretty interesting. Set that to the side, and then you can see the front-facing camera here. Lift up that little connection, and that releases the part. Now, sometimes when you buy replacement parts, it won't come with these little rubber doohickeys, so make sure you remove those from your old parts and then put them on your new ones before you install them back on the phone. But anyway, that's how the front camera comes off. The heart rate sensor and the flash look like they're soldered to the main board, so we're just going to leave those connected. Here's the earpiece. Just lift that out of the little groove. Once again, all replacement parts can be found in the video description right below this video. So here's the power button and also the vibration motor. So if either of those two items break, they are connected and they have the same little contact points that the headphone jack did. So I'm going to set that back into place. And the reason I show you this is because both of the other buttons, the volume buttons, have the same little connecting pads as before. So if you need to replace those, that's how you do it. I'm going to go ahead and lift off the antenna wires from the charging port and set those off to the side. And the charging port is here. It just lifts up from the body of the phone. Now this is the hard part. The capacitive buttons are attached to the charging port and those are underneath the screen, which is unfortunate. I wish it was a little bit easier to replace. So what we have to do is we have to heat up the screen. We're going to do the same thing that we did with the back cover. Heat it up not so hot that you burn yourself or that it's too hot to touch, but hot enough that it softens the glue underneath. And then we're going to slide a hard object. It could be like a playing card, or in this case, like a debit card or something that you're not going to use anymore, and slide it above the capacitive buttons, but below the glass LCD and the copper foil underneath the screen. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. I'm going to take another card and slide it over the other capacitive button, making sure to be between the copper foil and the mid frame. You don't want to start separating the glass from the LCD because that's an entirely different repair that I'll show you in a different video. Also make sure to watch out for the ribbon cables in the back, as well as the home button cable that you can see from the back of the phone as well. And you'll kind of see what that looks like as I lift up the screen. This whole process should take you between 10 and 15 minutes. Make sure to go slow because you do not want to damage the screen during this process because that is a much more expensive repair. Now if your screen is already damaged, I wouldn't worry about it as much. So here we are lifting off the screen. You can see the ribbon cables that are attached to the top of it. The reason I suggest coming from the bottom next to the capacitive buttons is because if you come from the top, these cables can be damaged as well. So coming from the bottom is much easier. Now, if you want to separate the glass from the LCD, that's an entirely different repair, and you can watch that video here of me working on a Samsung Galaxy S5. The screens are made the same, so it's pretty much the exact same process. Now to replace the charging port, we're going to lift off the capacitive buttons from the mid frame. They just pop right off. They're just held on with a little bit of adhesive, and that's the charging port. I will have replacement charging ports linked in the video description below if you need one of those. And here is the home button and fingerprint scanner. It's just connected to a little ribbon cable that feeds up through the mid frame and out the back of the phone, like you saw before. So be very careful with this during the screen replacement. If you need a new one, go ahead and check the video description below. Now putting the phone back together again, we're going to set the home button down first and make sure to feed that little slot through the back of the phone. And here's the adhesive. It's double-sided tape. I'll link this down in the video description below. The more you use, the better. Put a couple strips underneath and also put some on the four corners of the phone to help hold the corners of the screen down to the mid frame as well. Getting those cameras hooked back into place, just snapping them in like little Legos, as well as the charging port. Make sure to connect that before you put the motherboard down, otherwise you'll have a problem hooking that together. Make sure to press the motherboard into place. Clamp on the home button ribbon cable to the main board, and then make sure those capacitive buttons are wrapped around to the back side and pressed down and adhered with the little adhesive that comes with the new part. Now you can take the screen and connect it to the back of the motherboard, because it's much harder to do if the screen is already in place and held down with that sticky tape. So make sure to do it in that order. Get both of those connections secured to the motherboard, and then line up the screen with the home button as well as the earpiece, and that'll tell you exactly where to press it down onto that tape that you placed earlier. Now that the charging port is in place with the capacitive buttons on the other side, we can make sure that the earpiece is down, clamped in just like a little Lego, and then we have the wire cables down here for the antenna. Nothing super special with these, just make sure that they're clipped on to the little holes that they came from and also set into the little guiding pins, because if these are out of place, then the back of the phone's not going to clamp down as well, because these will be obstructing it. Before I put the back down, I am going to test out the phone really quick just to make sure that it's working and I don't need to readjust or reclamp on the screen connections. Everything looks fine. Battery's out, back of the phone is on. Now watch here. As I placed it down, I realized once again that the charging port does not go down normally. You have to lift out the phone, put the bottom in first, like line up the charging port with a little hole, and then you can squeeze up the body of the phone and clamp it all into place like that. So charging port first, rest the phone later, and then you can just press in all the corners and everything all around the outside of the phone. Anyway, pretty straightforward repair. It is very difficult. It is, hard to replace the screen, but it's definitely possible. Make sure all the screws are in. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them down in the comments below, or suggestions or things that helped you out during your repair. I'm sure it'll help out other people as well. Make sure to like if this video helped you, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks a ton for watching, and I hope to see you around.